think it's time we found a way back home. You lose so many things you love as you grow. I miss the days when I was just a kid. My fear became my shadow, I swear it did. Wherever is your heart, I call home. Wherever is your heart, I call home. Though your feet may take you far from me, I know. Wherever is your heart, I call home. Made me feel like I was always falling down without a place to go. Somewhere in the distance I heard you calling. Oh, it hurt so bad to let go of your head. Wherever is your heart, I go. Wherever is your heart, I go. Though your feet may take you far from me, I know. Wherever is your heart, I go. Even when you're high, you can't get low. Even when your friends are low, you're still alone. We always find the darkest place to go. Can't forgive our minds when we were born to roam. Wherever is your heart, I go. Wherever is your heart, I go. Though your feet may take you far from me, I know. Wherever is your heart, I go. Oh God, forgive my mind. Oh God, forgive my mind when I come home. When I come home. Oh God, forgive my mind. There's a road that's long and winding, it hollers home. I'm coming home. Oh God, forgive my mind. Oh God, forgive my mind when I come home. When I come home. Oh God, forgive my mind. Oh God, forgive my mind when I come home. When I come home. Wherever is your heart, I go. Wherever is your
Good morning
heart,
from the Watershed. We're so glad that you are here on this Labor Day weekend. Glad that you joined us. If you're watching online, I want to give you just a minute to say hi to maybe some other people. Maybe you're traveling and tuning in. So we'd love to give you a second just to say hello. If you're here in person, maybe you're joining us outside. We'd love to have you join us, stand, and we'll sing together. As the deer pants for the water, so my soul longs for you. All my tears have been my fodder, day and night, my only food. Oh, my soul, you feel forgotten. Put your hope in Christ the one. As the deer longs for the water, so my soul longs to you. Come thou fount of living water, tune my heart to sing your name. Streams of trust answers as your waves crash over me. Let your goodness like a fetter bind my one heart to thee. In the night, your song is with me. Day by day, you hold me fast. Oh, my soul, hope is in Jesus. You shall love your God at last. Come thou fount of living water, to my heart to sing your name. Streams of trouble never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Deep calls to deep, waves of unbelief, breakers crash, bring fall to my knees. It goes on and on. Where is my God? My salvation is in you, for you are love. Deep calls to deep, waves of unbelief, breakers crash and bring fall to my knees. It goes on and on. Where is my God? My salvation is in you. You are love. Come thou founts of living water, tune my heart to sing your name. Streams of trouble never ceasing, call for songs. Come thou fount of living water, tune my heart to sing your name. Streams of trouble never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Call for songs of loudest praise. Call for songs of loudest praise. You are good. I can see the good in me. You are love on display for all to see. You are light when the darkness closes in. You are hope, you embrace me as I am. You are peace when my fear is crippling. You are true,
will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. You are more than my words will ever say. You are Lord, all creation will proclaim. You are here, in your presence I'm made whole. You are God, of all else I'm letting go. And no, I'm running to your arms, I'm running to your arms. The vastness of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. And I'm running to your arms, I'm running to your arms. The vastness of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. Your kingdom come, your will be done in us, in us. Your kingdom come, your will be done in us, in us. Your kingdom come, your will be done in us, in us. Your kingdom come, your will be done in us, in us. And oh, I'm running to your arms, I'm running to your arms. The vastness of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. And I'm running to your arms, I'm running to your arms. The vastness of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. And nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. Sing that again. And no, I'm running to your arms, I'm running to your arms. The vastness of your love will always be enough. Nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. And nothing compares to your embrace. Light of the world, forever reign. Thank you so much for singing with us this morning. There's going to be some conversations this morning. You see some papers on your seats. There's be some conversation around this idea of family. And one of the things that we try to do every week is to give you a minute just to look around, just to make eye contact with people. Maybe we're not quite to hugs and everything yet with the pandemic and all of that, but just being able to connect, just being able to say hello, being able to see someone, to smile at someone. We feel like that's really important. So I want to give you a few moments to do that now, and then we'll continue with the service.
The Smiths plus one. I got it. Good morning. My name is Matt. I'm one of the pastors. I'm sorry, I was in a sidebar conversation. I've been trying to figure out what could I name this trio of folks who are. Didn't they do a good job this morning? And so Graham and Austin Smith, Mike Karan, and I'm thinking the Smiths plus one. What do you think? You like that? The Smiths plus one, or one plus the Smiths. We'll put you in the front of you like that better, I can tell. I'm so glad you're here this morning. I'm one of the pastors here. My name is Matt, might have already said that. And so much is getting ready to happen this fall. We went back and forth, like, what do we talk about in the announcement portion this morning, because there's just so many things taking place. So I'm gonna like really quickly hit on a couple of things, but there's actually a QR code that we want to send you to that kind of spells out all the opportunities for you to either participate in or get connected to between now and probably like the end of October. Thus far, things like Reclamation, which is sort of a deep dive theology Bible study sort of experience that's hosted by David Roberts. Preface, which is an onboarding experience for people who are brand new. Those are happening beginning a week from Tuesday night. Neurokin, which is a gathering for our neurodivergent community and families, or anyone who's interested in being more connected to that conversation. That's happening. All of this is at the QR code. There's also community events that we're pushing into the water, experimental type events around walks and meals and other things that are happening. There's actually a meeting right after this morning if you're interested in hosting one of those. So all of that's at the QR code. And then also next weekend starts our fall series. It's about 6 weeks long, and it's called Somebody I Used to Know. You know, from the song that now you won't be able to get out of your head between now and next week. Sorry I ruined you that way this morning. But it's a 5 to 6 week conversation about what does it mean for us to regather, reconnect relationally in this world post-pandemic, post the last 2 years. And what does that specifically mean for Watershed, and how does our uniqueness play into that? And so that's going to be a lot of fun starting next Sunday. I hope you'll come back. And then there's something that I need to kind of talk about and just take a few moments, and if you can indulge me, it's a little bit of an in-house conversation. So if you're brand new with us, just know this is not necessarily the ordinary for us in terms of talking about giving here at Watershed. Let me take you back to last summer. As we were coming out of the shutdown in January and February, re-emerging here, there was a surge of momentum that we were experiencing as a community. And every summer, there's a little bit of a dip in our generosity, the giving that flows our way here at Watershed. That's been almost verbatim every year, our experience. And so as we moved into August, we were a little bit behind in our budget this time last year, but we weren't like alarmists. We knew the return of our community was on the horizon. September, October, November usually created a surge of people and participation and giving, and then the Delta variant hit right as we were going back to school, and our momentum became a little stagnant. And so in October, we realized, man, we're kind of in crisis. This was last year now. And so there was a $65,000 deficit, annual budget deficit, that we started going after in November of last year. Our Watershed community responded with incredible sacrifice and generosity, and we finished the year right on track. It was on top of sending air tanks to some of the most remote parts of India, working with some of the fostering initiatives here in Charlotte and some other local initiatives for Christmas. It was a really powerful ending to our 2021 year. But one of the things that we talked about was the deficit we didn't fix the deficit. We repaired the deficit for that year, but moving forward, we have to become more diligent, more intentional. More people need to be invited and accept the invitation to step into recurring giving. And so we've had a goal every month to take on $500 worth of new givers, 5 families or 5 households, $500 or more a month. And so the good news is, moving from January through July, we have achieved that goal every single month. So well done, Watershed. Well done. Let me tell you what that equates to annually. That's an extra $90,000 towards healing our budgetary woes, so to speak. To put it in perspective, we have several rooms that we haven't been utilizing because of the slow groundswell of coming back. Those rooms have been getting rented for the past 3 years to kind of fill in where we're missing the mark in our annual budget. That's good news. We're utilizing our space. It costs about $9,000 in terms of a mortgage payment. So really, our space is paying for it, but that doesn't cover some of the needs that have still been lacking. So every month, we've met that goal. That's an extra $90,000. That's incredible. 31 brand new recurring givers this year. 31. That's great news. August was the first month where we didn't meet our goal. But man, what great news. Here's where it gets a little interesting. We've had 16 households that have pulled back from giving to the tune of about $50,000. So while there's $90,000 of new money, there's a recession of $50,000 that we're having to contend with. And so we finished June right on track. In fact, we were a little ahead of the game in June, to be quite frank, like $15,000 ahead of where we needed to be from a budgetary standpoint. And in June and July, we built a house for our international partner, Thunklau Hoykip and his family. They'd never had a house in their 15 years of ministry. I actually met with Thunklau and his family via Zoom this past week. October, they're going to be all settled in their space. They want to take us on a virtual tour. That's phenomenal. So June, we finished on track. We built a home. And then July and August hit. And things have turned in a different direction. And so now we're about 6 to 7% behind going into the fall. That's around $35,000 or more as we head into the last 4 months of the year. And I'm telling you this not because I want you to be alarmed, but because last year when I talked about this in October, it was like whiplash for everyone. So this is a little bit of, hey, Watershed community, well done so far, and this is the reality. We've got some strategies that we're working towards moving into the fall, namely, we're tightening our belt as usual. There's conversation on the table about how to utilize our space a little bit more, maybe create more rental opportunities for us. That's something we're not crazy about, to be quite frank, because the more we rent space, the less flexibility we have to meet the needs of our students and our kids. But here's what I'm inviting you into this morning. First of all, stay the course. Those of you who have signed up and said, man, I'm in for this amount this month, or I've increased this amount monthly, or maybe you took a break and came back and started giving in a recurring fashion. Just thank you for doing that, and please stay the course. And then also, we need to get back to meeting that monthly goal. 5 new giving units or families or households to the extent of $100 or more a month. And let me just say this too. Man, like when I look at how generosity flows into this community, I know some of you give well beyond that. Thank you. And then some of you don't give up to $100. You have smaller portions, and I need you to know that is just as appreciated as anything else, all right? Like it takes a spectrum of effort and collective sacrifice and investment for Watershed to be Watershed. There's so much on the horizon this coming fall. We've got big plans for 2023, and resources are literally helping fuel us move forward in all of that. And so if you're sitting there this morning and going, you know what, I think I could probably help out in any of these areas, we would welcome that. If you're interested in a one-time gift to help us trim back that $35,000 plus, then we would welcome that as well. We're going to be keeping really close track of this throughout the rest of the year. We'll bring you up to speed as things develop, as we progress through this. And again, thank you for indulging me. We don't usually spend this much time on a Sunday morning talking about these sorts of things. If you're brand new, thank you for your patience in that. And may you have an incredible morning. I can't wait for you to hear from Blair this morning. It's going to be a great time. Thanks.
crooked tongue. Always wanted to be someone. Face down on the concrete floor. I guess God don't talk to strangers anymore. Hanging up long distance lines, pulling the cord on the closing sign. I'm better to burn out than to rust. What a childish fool I was. What a childish fool I was. 'Cause I wanted you to make my bed and sleep in it so I could rest. And I wanted you to know my head and understand I was bluffing all along. Trying it on for size, living other people's lives, to hold out for a dream. I miss the forest for the trees. 'Cause I wanted you to make my bed, sleep in it so I could rest. And I wanted you to know my hand and understand that I was bluffing all along. Bought a pack for the first time that I walked out on me crying. Nothing's ever gonna be enough. Love is what they said it was. Love is what they said it was. I wanted you to make my bed and sleep in it. I could rest. I wanted you to know my hand and understand. I was bluffing all along 'cause I wanted you to make my bed, sleep in it so I could rest. I wanted you to know my hand and understand I was bluffing all along. And I was bluffing all along. I was bluffing all along.
Hey, it's me again. I want to talk more about money. No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. There's something that I want to make you as our Watershed community aware of. If you have a child in greenhouse or students, you already know what I'm about to describe. But traditionally, over the last 17 years or so, Watershed has always viewed our kids' ministry, our greenhouse ministry, and our shed students, which is junior and senior high, as sort of these separate entities. We've always had either a part-time or a full-time children's pastor. Right now, over the past 3 years, that's been Blair Gore. And we've always had a part-time student pastor, most recently David Roberts. Coming out of the pandemic, as we were collecting feedback from our staff, from our lead team, from families, from parents, we started to ask questions about what it meant to view a child's developmental process here at Watershed from birth all the way through 12th grade. What does it mean for that to be more integrated, more holistic, and more within the context of some of the needs that families have been articulating over the past 4 or 5 months as well? And so this sent us on a little bit of a fact-finding journey, but then also pontificating about, is there a structural change that would then meet needs at a more, in a more healthy, more robust way? And the conclusion that we came to was, yeah, we think there is. Like moving into a structure that has a family ministry sort of dynamic where those two entities come underneath the leadership of a family ministry pastor became an idea that really took on energy and began to be animated in the decision-making process of how we're going to move into the fall. And so beginning next weekend, we're officially kind of transitioning from, all right, we have a greenhouse pastor and we have a student pastor, to we now have a family ministry and we have a pastor that's going to be overseeing that trajectory from birth all the way through 12th grade. This will still allow student ministry to have their autonomy and have their identity, and the same will be true for greenhouse. But then the question was, all right, who's that pastor? Well, it just so happens that we have a pastor who has a degree in youth ministry, who has experience as a youth pastor, who has a degree in elementary education, who has a degree in elementary education, has a degree in children's ministry, has experience in children's ministry, and also spent 3.5 years as a family ministries pastor at a church that's about our size on the West Coast. Any idea who I might be describing right now? Blair Gore. Yeah, Blair Gore. And so over the last 3 or 4 months, we have been transitioning Blair from just only being the kids pastor into this more elevated space of family ministries pastor. You might be wondering, well, what does that mean for David Roberts? David Roberts has been a part-time youth pastor, part-time justice, part-time adult development, and overseeing our hospitality. He will be moving out of student ministries, and he will not be short of things to do. He's going to be developing even more robust expressions of adult ministry, adult development, pathways and lanes. As a matter of fact, if you've already started to see an uptick in things like reclamation and liberation this fall, that's why, because he's already starting to do some of that stuff. And so this is we've never done this as a church. This is a new thing. It's unprecedented. It's a little like healthy, kind of scary thing. It's like, oh my gosh, we get to try this, we get to do this. And what makes it so invigorating is not just the validation and the support that we've got from our staff and our lead team and our families, but who is at the helm of this thing. And so in a moment, Blair's going to be coming to stage, and the way I want to celebrate this is when she comes, will you give her an obnoxious, validating round of applause when she comes in just a moment? Thanks. I'm glad you know about this now. I guess the lid is off, and we're still working through what we're going to actually call family ministries. I think Blair might be saying something about that either today or soon. But in just a moment, will you give her a warm, welcome round of applause? Thanks.
guys got the obnoxious part, right? First question I have is, Austin and Graham, did you two coordinate your outfits together on purpose? Because you have the exact same shirt on. Exact. With a black shirt under it? Is that a brother thing? Like, should we have all worn the same thing today? It was a little interesting. I had a moment there. So as Matt said, I'm Blair, and I am the children's pastor turning family pastor soon. I'm incredibly excited and humbled and slightly scared for this new role. I don't know about you, but anytime I do anything that is considered successful by people, whenever I have to replicate it, I'm always scared that that's never going to happen and it was just a fluke and I just got lucky. So I always, wrestle with that just a bit. And I need to brush up on my teenagerisms, like I'm going to have to really keep checking Urban Dictionary to know about all these things. So I'm a little out of practice, but I'm really excited for what this looks like. I consider it an honor to be able to walk alongside teenagers. I think they have a very special wisdom that they bring to our world that a lot of us miss out on because we're scared of them. If I'm honest, there's nothing like a teenager looking at you like you are losing it. But they do have a lot of wisdom to share. So I'm thrilled to step into that space next week. And for those who are here, we're going to do a big kickoff. I know it's the Panthers' first home game. I get it. But if you didn't get tickets, then you can come and watch the pre-show here with us. We're going to have wings and root beer floats or other drinks if you don't like root beer floats. I realize that's a special thing. But I would love for you to stay after for an hour and just hang out with everybody. We're going to do it on the front lawn, so it's kids, families, teenagers, and anybody who doesn't have kids as well. You're all invited to eat wings with us. So I think it'll be fun. So speaking of wisdom, like I talked about with teenagers, we're in our textuality series, which is probably one of my most favorite series. I'm a little bit of a nerd, which is probably why I went to seminary. But I love that we get to dig together through the adventures and family drama and the history and monsters and magic of the Bible together. I wholeheartedly believe that something surprising, something liberating, and something new will show up in this space this morning. Last year I talked about the story of Jonah, and I used a flannel graph. So I'm really sorry to disappoint you, but I have no flannel graph of Jonah like this year, because this is definitely how he looked as I cut him out of the felt. But we're going to talk about Proverbs today. So no flannel graph, but I think it's going to be just as fun. So I want to start with this big picture of the book of Proverbs. What is actually happening in this book? So Proverbs is an Old Testament book in the Bible, and it's considered one of the books of wisdom literature. Now, it needs other Old Testament books like Ecclesiastes to be really complete, but it's a beautiful work. It's 31 chapters long. It starts with a father-son conversation, and it ends with a mother-son conversation. It's not a book about promises or formulas or laws. It's just poems and ancient proverbs that have been passed down from generation to generation to generation. It's accumulated insight of humanity that acknowledges there's something bigger than just ourselves. And this something bigger ties us together. So in the first chapter of Proverbs, we meet wisdom, and she's raising her voice. Yes, I said she, because wisdom is a woman. Hair flip. She's in this public square, and she's raising her voice, and she's making a speech and inviting all of us to align ourselves with something bigger. And this something bigger is not about IQs. It's not about being smart. In the ancient wisdom tradition, wisdom is actually joy. It's seeing the divine presence in all of humanity. She is inviting us to live, to dance, to experience joy, to make the most of our time on earth. She's inviting us to ask ourselves what we're meant to do with our time, our resources, and our hearts. And then she's telling us to do it. She wants to show us how to live so that we experience true, genuine, authentic joy. And wisdom, she is all around us and constantly calling us to join her in this way of life, into ways of generosity, into ways of peace, into ways of compassion, and into ways of learning. Now, we meet wisdom, but we also meet the fool. And the fool is the one who doesn't want to learn, that has no questions, that is selfish, that is egocentric, always the victim, and always prideful. And the fool always chooses death, which is probably not what you think that it is, because in the Old Testament, life and death were considered to be in the present. They were not about a reward or a punishment for later. That only came whenever religion developed. So I want you to keep that in mind. There's a deep respect for life in the wisdom tradition. When we connect with who we really are, we are experiencing wisdom. When we acknowledge that we're part of a bigger story, that we're not God, when we come to the end of ourselves, when our ego deflates, that's where wisdom begins, and that's where power is. And that's where our individualism transforms into something more communal. Because wisdom, she is inviting us into this common life together. She's opening our eyes to this bigger picture that's there and inviting us to align ourselves with our values, because that's when our work actually means something. When we go after the things that make us angry for our world, wisdom moves us towards action. And the joy and the love that we have for humanity, it spills over in this space. So wisdom, I would argue, is the thing that wakes us up, that grounds us, and that spurs us towards making an actual difference. If you want to know if you're choosing to live in this way of wisdom, I'd invite you to reflect for a second. Do you ask yourself sometimes, is this really all there is to this life? Or maybe you notice your sleep. Wisdom speaks to sleep and anxiety and the connections between those often. Do your actions match your beliefs and values everywhere you go? Or do you show up differently based on what the societal norms are? Or do you look around the world and not feel anger or rage about injustice? Your answers to these questions can tell you if you're choosing wisdom and life or foolishness and death. Now, I don't know about you, but if this is the wisdom that I get trained in, dedicated to, or invited to, then I'm all in. This wisdom doesn't draw lines to keep certain people out. This wisdom celebrates questions. This wisdom includes science and nature and divinity in all of humanity. This wisdom is not a long list of to-dos or don'ts. It's way deeper than that, and it's way bigger than that. I want to continue to accept wisdom's invitation to choose life and generosity, compassion, grace, and an unquenchable desire to learn. Now that we've talked about the big picture of Proverbs, I want to focus specifically on Proverbs 22:6. You've probably heard of this verse if you grew up in Christian circles. It says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." Or there's the version from the Message, which is, "Point your kids in the right direction. When they're old, they won't be lost." Or there's the last version, the NIV. Some people call it the nearly inerrant version. That was always the joke. Start children off on the way they should go, and even when they're old, they will not turn from it. So, let's start with what we might already know here. And to find out what we might already know about this verse, I say we Google it. That's my favorite. Everybody Googles everything, right? So whenever I say, what does it mean to train up a child in the way they should go, this is what comes up on Google. Here's the first one. So it says, it's a warning to parents that if they allow their children to have their own way, they will not depart from that foolishness when they are older. So what I read here is, no, Cindy, you cannot have that blue popsicle because you're going to end up being blah, blah, blah whenever you get older. You can fill in the blank for whatever the worst case scenario might be for you. If we keep going, the next thing that was in the Google search that popped up was about spiritual responsibility that parents have for their kids. So add that to the continually growing list for parents. I know parents don't have enough to do, so now you have even more on your plate, on your list. And then I think, what does it even mean to have a spiritually responsible child? So whenever you keep going, the next thing that pops up on there is this whole list where there's actually things that you're supposed to pray over for your kid. Pray for their spiritual gifts to be manifest. Pray that they will resist the devil. Pray that they will walk by faith and not by sight. Pray for their spiritual discernment. And pray for their future spouse, because that's important. So there you have. If you didn't grow up hearing this verse, I feel like I've caught you up a little bit. So you're welcome. This verse that we read has been deeply connected to parenting in modern society. But why? I just told you about the book of Proverbs, which was about wisdom. It's really about leaning into wisdom as a way of living and choosing these values of generosity, compassion, grace, learning, and loving in a brave way. So how in the world did we get to the devil, good behavior, and future spouses? I'm so glad you asked. Let's learn, maybe unlearn, or relearn together. I don't think Solomon was sitting around thinking about writing a poem on how to be a better parent. And I think this because the word parenting was not even a word until recently. Yes, as long as there have been human beings, there have always been parents that are there that take care of children. That's not new. But the word parenting as a verb didn't appear in the United States until 1958. And then it only became a common word around the 70s, which happens to be the same time that other evangelical parachurch organizations started to push family values, like focus on the family. Yes, I get it. I watched a lot of McGee and Me. I think that was the name of it growing up. So there's a lot of things that surfaced at that point that dealt around sexual purity, creationism, prayer in schools, and also traditional gender roles. So parenting, now this multi-billion-dollar industry, hasn't even existed that long. And it's coming on the scene and telling us basically everything that we do, because there's arguments on both sides, is either going to ruin our kids or make them the best kids in the world, right? Like one person might say you have to turn your stroller around facing forward or your kids are going to have deep psychological trauma. And then one might say you have to have them facing the other way or they're going to have deep psychological trauma. It's all over the place. But prior to the 60s, this wasn't a thing. And the reason it wasn't a thing is because most kids grew up helping to raise their siblings. Bigger families were present then. Now, the majority of adults, whenever they have kids, have never been around a kid in their life. So what do? They do the exact same thing we just did. They Google it. They watch Instagram reels. They follow people on TikTok. Those are the things that they have to do to figure out how to be a parent. Also, prior to the 60s, most kids lived close to their biological relatives. So I don't know about you, I grew up on a farm, and literally everybody in my family grew up around me. My aunts and uncles were all around me, my grandparents were across the street. So even if my parents weren't around, there was somebody there that was in the space with us. Now we've moved to cities. There's a lot of things that have changed in our society, and so people do move away from their grandparents and their siblings, and you end up settling apart from each other. I don't say all that because I think these are bad things. I think they're just our reality. I think that things evolve and things transform, and they become better versions of themselves because we have more knowledge. I love learning from developmental professionals, researchers, psychologists. I love to hear about how humanity grows and thinks and processes daily life. In our community alone, we have a ton of people that are those people on a social media platform. But while I believe that parenting has evolved, I also believe that it's turned into another goal-oriented thing in our society. It has benchmarks, it measures growth, it measures success, it's turned to a business with a GDP. There are competing promises of formulas and knowledge that will all make you all experts. And this is not the good part. The action of parenting isn't meant to be done by one or two adults who teach a kid how to be a good kid so that they turn into a good adult, or just a good kid that's better than the kid next door. Alison Gopnik, who is a psych professor at UC Berkeley, she proposes that parenting should not be about caring for a child like a carpenter with a finished product in mind, but we should grow our children more like a gardener. She says that the way we're practicing parenting right now is not based in science, and it's not good for parents or for kids. Parenting with expectations can only lead to frustration, resentment, and bitterness. And parenting alone is not realistically possible. So I want to propose that our community here replace the word parenting with humaning. This is a concept by Cindy Wong Brandt. She says that being a better parent simply means being a better human. And being a better human means being a better coworker. It means being a better friend. And being a better human means being more compassionate to our own selves as well. Parenting is not just for parents. It's for anyone who wants to see a better world, because we understand that we all coexist. We all share this space. And parenting this way is revolutionary. It's liberating. And it's experiencing wisdom just as we talked about earlier. Parenting this way changes us. We get to know ourselves better, and it demands that we become better people. Parenting teaches all of us how to manage our triggers, because kids push our buttons. But guess what? It's not that kid's fault. Recognizing that is an invitation into something inside of us that needs attention, healing, or acknowledgement. And that can be something from a traumatic past, or it can just be some kind of trauma that we experience currently because we live in an unkind world. Parenting this way is giving space for the unmet needs inside of us to be healed so that we become more wise people. People whose lives have deep meaning, people filled with joy, people who celebrate each other, people who balance work and play, people who simply want to be better today than they were yesterday. We are all parenting the children of our society. We are all reparenting parts of our own inner child or our teenage selves. We all need to play more. We all need each other to learn and unlearn healthier relationship habits. Our unmet needs from childhood are the things that require more self-compassion today. We are all being invited into this wisdom, this humaning, this living. And this power we gain from this wisdom is what revolutionizes our community, our city, and this bonkers world that we call home. It's transformative, it's liberating, and it's magical. But it is also hard. Taming our triggers is hard. Changing our thought processes is hard. Choosing ourselves is hard. Doing the work is hard. So today I ask you, the single, the married, the biological parent, the foster parent, the grandparent, where are you parenting or humaning? Who are you parenting or humaning with? How can we expect our kids and our students to grow into justice-seeking, brave, and generous humans when we aren't even choosing to live in that wisdom? We are all being watched, all of you, even if you don't know it. I had a kid say this week, Blippi's an adult? For those who don't know Blippi, you can Google Blippi later, but there was a shock to the fact that Blippi is not a kid. And they said, why do you ask that? And they said, because adults aren't fun. That's a 6-year-old that says that. Come on, people, we got to get it together. We have got to choose wisdom together. We have got to ask ourselves, what are we meant to do with our time, our resources, and our hearts? If you don't already volunteer somewhere, hear me say that we need you here. The ratio of adult to child used to be 1 adult to 5 kids. Now that ratio has flipped. Every kid needs 5 adults. 5 people that show up in their lives. Coaches, biological family members, teachers, church volunteers, mentors, tutors, people who show up to cheer them on, to listen to them without lecturing, and to make time for them in the midst of their own busy lives. 5 gardeners that till their soil, water their souls, and walk through how they cope with the storms, disappointments, and frustrations of life. 5 gardeners that remind them that there is poop of life. And it sucks. And it's probably going to only make them more healthy, but it sucks in the moment. 5 gardeners that are there to ponder with them, to cultivate their hearts and dreams. 5 gardeners who aren't getting rid of a plant because it doesn't match the rest of them. 5 gardeners who are not worried about growing the biggest potato or squash in the garden. But instead they are loving them and supporting them to become their wisest self. 5 gardeners that get the opportunity to learn from them, from the kids. And they give them uninterrupted time that has no manipulative agenda. In order for us to accept wisdom's invitation, we have to become more human so that we actually live. And kids and teenagers and minors and children, whatever you want to call them, they are one of the most marginalized groups in our society. They have no money. They have no financial assets. They're completely dependent, and they require a lot of resources. But they are also one of the best ways that we reflect on each other and that make us better people. And if being a kid isn't enough, most actually contain multiple intersectional oppressions. The kid who is gay or trans or refugee, disabled, black or brown. Society is constantly erasing kids' voices. Without them, though, we will never thrive. Not today, not in 5 years, not in 10 years. As Lila Watson says, if you have come to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come up because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. Parenting Society's children will help us to view the world through their eyes. Parenting Society's children will bring back our happiness and learning through play. Then we will become wise people of generosity and peace and compassion and learning. And we all have a chance to be part of this messy, hard, and healing revolution. We're not looking for perfect adults. Friends, I could stand up here and tell you story after story of adults that showed up in my life. They chose to be there the best and the worst of times, the hardest times. But they supported me and they loved me. And I still have a relationship with these people. And we disagree about theology and politics. But they chose to show up. And that's what I needed. So perfection is not what we're looking for. But that's what society has told us. But remember, with wisdom, there are no success markers, no goals, no true experts, and no formulas that help us get through this. That is propaganda that promises a way of wholeness and perfection, and it's not real. We are all existing in this imperfect world that includes pain and trauma from unjust systems and broken narratives. So maybe parenting looks like getting to know your neighbors better. Maybe it means showing up for more of your friends with kids. Maybe it means tutoring with heart math. Maybe it's actually becoming a foster parent. Or maybe you could volunteer in Greenhouse. It's my shameless plug. Seriously, though, I know you get tired of hearing me say it, but I genuinely believe that 2 hours, one Sunday a month with our kids will change your life. And I am always inviting you to be part of this beautiful garden that we are cultivating. I've put a paper on your chairs and there's a pen. This is a resource inventory. I'm trying to just figure out what our community has. If you mark that you have a jet ski, I promise I'm not just going to assume we get to use it. So anything you say yes to on there will be something that we have a conversation about. But if you do have any of those things or you're willing to share anything that's on there, I invite you to fill that out and drop it in our boxes. I would love for you all, every person in this room, to be part of healing from previous childhood experiences and striving to prevent traumatic child care experiences. We're daring to imagine a new present and a future that we believe is possible. And the invitation into this meaningful work, it stands. You and I are the stewards of our time, energy, and resources. Let's heal together. Let's learn together. Let's grow together. Wisdom is inviting you and me to live.
I'm going to end a little bit different than we normally do on Sundays. I'm going to ask you to stand, and you're probably not going to know this song, but as Blair mentioned, kids think we're not fun. And so we're going to do a song that might bring out some of the fun in what it means to be a family. So there's a line in the song that's going to repeat a few times. It says, "Family, kick off your shoes and dance." Feel free if you feel free. Maybe you don't kick off your shoes. Don't throw them at us, at least, if you do. But feel free to liven up a little bit. We've got a day off, maybe. Maybe you've got a day off tomorrow. Maybe you don't. But I want to invite you into this next song. Family, singing in the kitchen. Family, running through the yard. Family, going on vacation. Family, on the credit card. Family, all in this together. Family, taking a chance. Family, like birds of a feather. Family, kick off your shoes and dance. Family, on the way to the city. Family, laughing in the rain. Family, it ain't always pretty. Family can drive you insane. Family, got the keys to the kingdom. Family, take it out of the car. Family, all 4 seasons. Family will bless your heart. You don't choose them, you can't lose them. We all have a song to sing. Some are crazy, some are amazing. All got a little bit of everything. Family, sons and daughters. Family, neighbors and friends. Family, baptized in the water. Family, put me on the map. Family, all in this together. Family, we're taking a chance. Family, like birds of a feather. Family, kick off your shoes and dance. Kick off your shoes and dance. Thank y'all so much for being here this morning. I hope you have a great week. We'll see you next Sunday. Don't forget to put your papers, if you have them, in the box in the back. We'll see you next time.